We're live, Alison.
We are live, and I can see a lot of people coming in, Laura.
Yes, it's
Yeah,
a
well,
nice moment watching that number go up.
um, well, it's well into March now.
Yes.
This year is flying, isn't it?
Hmm.
Yeah, many twists and turns already, of course, I think.
Yes, a lot. Yeah, a lot, a lot. I feel very buoyed by the weather today. I feel like when we set
Oh,
this
it's
up a really long
gorgeous, isn't
time
it?
ago, I was
Yeah,
like, oh, we'll just be coming
yeah.
into it. And of course, I used our sort of playbook to help set the dates. And
Mm.
yes,
Al-
we've done very well.
Yeah, although I did get an Uber in today, which is shocking given where I live. But I was not
Well,
feeling
it
tip
was,
top.
and it's in these last morning, Alison.
And the man was playing boom boom music.
Oh, right.
And was very jolly all the way
Yeah.
home. Anyway,
Oh, very nice. Well, hey, thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We have called this Now and Next. We're going to take a look at the mood of the nation as it stands, a bit of a sort of state of the nation review. We're going to look at what's kind of currently shifting for consumers, what's coming up in spring, summer, some of the kind of moving parts associated with that, and what you can do about
yeah,
it. So, we're
of
hoping this
course,
can be,
that's the most important thing at the end of the day,
yes,
isn't it? What you should be doing. Laura, we should introduce ourselves, shouldn't we?
we should.
Because I know we've got a lot of additional people registered today. So I'm Alison, founder of Kokoro. I've been doing this for a very, very long time. And we've looked in lots of detail over the last 6 years, really, of what the nation is feeling, thinking, and doing. And we're going to share that insight today. I've largely looked after the numbers of this study. Laura, you've looked after the qualitative part of it.
Yes, absolutely. For 6 years
Yeah.
now, a long time. It's been kind of incredible project to work on to get to see all the kind of twists and turns and really understand where the nation is at and where they're kind of shifting to next. And I think it's particularly exciting when you think what we really believe what this study allows us to do. So
Yeah. So, I mean, we absolutely believe that people act on feelings, and it's the feel of it, not the think of it, that kind of moves them to action. So, of course, the future always shows
mm,
up in terms of how people are feeling at any one point in time. And having been able to track this in enormous detail for 6 years, I think we've got very good at knowing the direction of travel. And that's what we're going to reveal today. I think the other side of that, the most important side, of course, is in revealing what is coming next, we can make sure you're ready to take advantage of it.
mhm. Yes, absolutely.
So it is an enormous study, and I think it is worth just reflecting on that.
Mm.
Also, just how long it's been going. But of course, really, we use all of that to predict the future and look at brand activation against that. But Laura, what is it that we actually do?
We speak to 2,000 people every week, a different 2,000 people every week. So over those 6 years, we have built a kind of beautiful data set, enormous data set, understanding the mood of the nation. It's not just numbers. We have sort of stories baked in as well. We have a qualitative community that is longitudinal. So it mirrors the quant in that sense of you can really see where things are moving and shifting, and you've got that kind of trend line or trend feel.
Yeah, and I think the genius is that weekly read, isn't it?
Mm,
Because we really can sort of map every twist and turn. And by doing that, I think it just gives us much, much bigger, longer range
mhm.
visibility. So the truth was, this was born absolutely out of crisis of the pandemic, a massive threat to us as a business, of course, but also to the nation. We were going to do it for 6 weeks. We are now 6 years later.
Yeah, absolutely. It was sort of bought and built and kind of created very quickly. Since then, it has just constantly sort of transformed. And I think it's been an amazing story of kind of co-creation alongside clients. We have got clients who are with us now, who are kind of with us on day one, lots more that we've welcomed on board since then. And I think that although the nuts and bolts of it in terms of, the sample and the robustness of it and the kind of matching of kind of rigor and flair has always been at its heart. It's almost kind of irrecognizable in terms of what we create and what we produce. And over the last year, we've unlaunched our new portal that's kind of completely changed how people can use it and the value that they can get to it. And we've got a very exciting roadmap for the
We have,
future.
with lots of AI integration, which I think allows our human insights just to be almost sort of weaponized,
Mm.
really, if that's the right word, so that individual clients can flex them for their own business. So, Laura, the promise was today. now, first of all, and then kind of looking forward. So as we enter year seven, you're saying Britain's got the itch. It's been a really difficult 7 years. That's an understatement, I
Mm.
think. And we want more. And I think people are struggling to know exactly how to get that more. And that's the sort of exciting unlock of the second half of the presentation. So I think bear with us. Sometimes people do think we're a little bit gloomy. I think we're realistic. Um, because I do think, in really understanding the plight of normal people, there are magical opportunities for brands, and people really do need that help
Mm.
at this moment in time. Laura, our lead metric is kind of net confidence. We track that every single week with 2,000 people. It's 4 times more robust than any comparative metric that is out there. Laura, just quickly narrate the many different sort of chapters, stories over the last 6 years.
Mm. Yeah, interesting because we started this in crisis, didn't we? And when we were talking about, like I said, there's been many since then. So it has been a turbulent time. Just to anchor you a bit, we did have a study, nowhere near as robust as this, but similar to this before 2020. And we know that net confidence then sat at around 45%. So it's important to know that when we say we're realistic and kind of bear with us, like we have been a long way off that for a very long time. But yes, the sort of early part of this study, we really were plunged into health crisis. We were in lockdown. We were frightened. We saw sort of scenes we never thought we'd see on the news. Almost before that ended, at that moment of Freedom Day, concern about our money sets in, and we're plunged into a cost of living crisis. And you can really see the impact that had on confidence. We went through a kind of stabilizing period, which was just things not kind of getting worse, I think. So people managing to find their footing in quite a strange place, but not a kind of constantly worsening state. We had a brief moment of hope when the election was announced. That did not last too long post-election, and we've been in this period of storm and slump for a long time, starting with those riots, but really quite a kind of stable period. And it's a weird kind of stability, isn't it? It's not a kind of buoyant stability. It's not a sensation of things kind of being back where they once were. It is a sense of just kind of keep going.
Yeah, and I think if you look at that very last week, which is last week, then we can see a decline actually. And I know I've seen this week's figures; it stayed at
Mm.
that lower level. So the change is forever
Yeah.
there. So we are stuck in this odd kind of different forces exerting themselves on us. So on one hand, we've got this storm, it's chaos, we never quite know what's coming next. We forever feel we're going to be blindsided. And then on the other side, there's this sort of slumpiness, the kind of knowing that it's going to be difficult moving forward. And that's a very strange place to find ourselves.
Yeah, really strange. I mean, humans don't like dissonance, and they couldn't really be too much more dissonant. The fact that it feels like kind of history's being made by the day, and yet my life looks sort of depressingly, dwindlingly similar to how it did last year and actually kind of the year before is a difficult combination.
Yeah, and just to quantify that sense of storm, it's enormous, isn't it, across every single age group here, that there is more change than people have been used to. And of course, if there's one thing humans don't like is change. There's whole books, essays written about that change curve, isn't it? It's something we find very difficult to kind of cope with because we're programmed to like status quo, and we put more emphasis on what we've had than the possibility of the future. So if that's the storm that's playing out, Laura, alongside that, there is this sense of slump, and economic slump, I think, is at the heart of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is feeling like it's kind of holding the kind of nation back, our local areas back, and our own lives back. And we can really see that and kind of feel that. We've kind of feel it be projected. I think those latest kind of figures there really are sobering from consumers, how long they expect it to last. Well, again, it's kind of just pushed out again. It's that sense that we had on our kind of confidence slide of a recovery that never kind of quite comes. We just keep kind of extending the deadline in our own mind.
Yeah, and I think really at the heart of that certainty that things are not going to improve for the foreseeable is the fact that we don't really buy into what the UK government is capable capable of doing. And we're very worried about what the American government, and specifically, I think Donald Trump, is doing. And so within that, you do absolutely get the straight line of slump to our government, the storm to the
Mm.
US government. And Laura, we've seen people become very concerned about their money. Inflation was a very big driver of that back in the cost of
Mm.
living crisis. When we look here at absolute official inflation levels versus the proportion of people worried about inflation, there was a symmetry actually as they grew. But as inflation, the rate of inflation has declined, then we've not really seen a decline in the number of people concerned about inflation.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've talked about a lot during this study, and I think it's really opened our eyes to it. We always knew this existed, but I think we've seen it just at every turn is kind of number blindness. And I think that inflation figures would be a really brilliant example of that. It's a really difficult thing for consumers to think about. It's got a compounding effect, which we struggle to kind of compute. And so this feels irritating, doesn't it? That we can hear and see numbers about inflation and kind of 3%. People think, how can it be 3% when I can't get anything for a fiver anymore? That kind of sensation just kind of feels so wrong. And so that's why we get them like totally out of lockstep now. And I think a sort of frustration and anger around things are getting easier. Like, wake up, like that isn't how my life is.
Prices are not going
Yeah.
down. Yeah, they're just increasing at a
Mhm.
slower rate, and that hurts a lot. Intriguingly, what has happened since we've gone into storm and slump is we've become really alert. We've attended to the fact that the world is more bonkers. We can't trust the people in charge of it. And so we've watched the news more. We're trying to tune out actually more recently, but generally we've watched the news more. But we've also kind of moved into a thinky kind of existence where we actively try and reassess parts of our life and work out how we can navigate these very difficult opposing forces.
Yeah, and I think it's incredible just to see how high that is, that level of
This is next as well, actually.
reassessment.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Really huge, kind of constantly rethinking, kind of juggling a lot of possibilities, trying really to kind of find a way to win in between those two difficult forces.
Yeah, when winning feels very, very difficult,
Elusive.
really, it feels much more like we're just trying to
Mm,
cope, I think, than win. And on this chart here on the left-hand side, I think we really get to the nub of that issue that when we ask people, are you trying to hold on to what you want, what you've got, or are you trying to move forward? And people agree with both of those things.
mm.
And it's just so tricky to know where to step forward and where to just hang on to like solid ground.
Yeah, it's a difficult sensation, I think. Just so many sort of thwarted plans, a sense of like light confidence, and then kind of that sort of totally erodes very, very quickly, having to kind of switch course, juggle, kind of spin plates. And I think it just feels like very, very, very busy minds a lot of the time. And of course, it is sort of an impossibility to hold on what you had to have and kind of completely move
Yeah.
forwards. They're two very challenging things to want at the same time.
Yeah, and I hope people can empathize with that because I can feel this myself. You know, you feel confident one moment, you read a news article, you see something, you think, oh, it's not that. So you end up second guessing
Mm.
yourself, questioning, and then feeling less assertive, less sure,
People talk about politics, I think they say we need someone to come in and mix this up and do something
but
really
not too
different,
much.
but not rock the boat. Um, and you hear those sorts of things like really play off each other in the same sentence.
Yeah, so of course, when we are left with that degree of uncertainty, we play it safe.
Mm.
So we've got two charts here committed to a major purchase or looked at house prices, an indication that you are going to take kind of a step forward in your life. And both of those are kind of at
Mm.
long-term lows there. So safety wins at every turn. And Laura, I think sort of building on that, the desire to save also kind of increases over time.
Yeah, I think if we've learnt something over the last 6 years, it has been that there have been too many moments we've been blindsided, too many moments we felt exposed. And this idea of a buffer and the sensation we get from having built a buffer, not only the sense of safety, but a little bit of a sense of progress, we can literally watch a number kind of increase, feels such the right thing to do. It's sort of instinctively where we want to move to. So yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
save.
save, buffer up. So really important chart here. We're avoiding very big decisions, investments. We're trying to save rather than spend, build up that buffer. But critically, if we look at these two charts here, things, despite all of that effort, are just slightly moving in the wrong direction. So on the left-hand side, we've got the number of people with savings over £10,000. We can see that that just has come off a little bit. It's lower than at any point over the last 16 to 18 months. And we can also see an uptick in the number of people with outstanding credit
Mm.
on a credit card. So we're doing all of that sensible living. We're saving where we can, yet things are sort of moving in the wrong direction.
Yeah, because since we've lost ground, we haven't got anything to point to as to what we lost ground over. And that I think feels really, really difficult. It's not like we've done this, but we've got this sort of story to tell, or, we've managed to squeeze this one thing in. That's not the picture. We just feel sort of nibbled at.
Yeah. And I should say, if this all feels very gloomy, I'm sure it does. This is realistic. This is what is happening. We're going to come on to how to resolve this
We're
for.
a handful of charts away. Stay with
We
us.
really are. Um, I mean, it stands to sense, doesn't it, that those who have less income are going to feel more squeezed, given everything we've talked about so far. And we can absolutely see it here, can't we? Net optimism on the left-hand side. That is always lower in people with lower income groups. Money does actually make you happy to some degree, but we can see that's come off over the last year in the lower income groups, and we can also see a growth in the number of people fearful of their money amongst those lower income groups as well. So the squeeze is harder for those who have been squeezed now for really a long period of time. And so we get to a position, Laura, where a very significant number of the population feel like they are struggling.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge swathes of people, 31% in that low mood or sadness. That's a lot of people, 17 million people. And I think this is a real sort of kind of empathy moment we often find at big presentations and things. I think uh, that sense that a lack of kind of buoyancy and what that can kind of really mean for how life generally feels, I think is quite sobering. And this is a sense of sort of just about coping. This is not a sense that kind of recovery is coming, is it? This is exactly that feeling that things just feel very difficult to kind of wade through that storm and slump.
Because we've done it for a very,
Yeah.
very long period of time. Yeah. So coping probably is where it nets out for most people. Um, Laura, I think we're going to start to move on to think about the opportunities for brands. And this chart, I think, is really important. And we should say, actually, the deck will be available for people after this. So if you sat
Yes.
there screenshotting, you don't need to.
Relax.
So chart on the left-hand side, we forever tracked how people deal with problems in their life. There's more codes than this. There's one that is just, frankly, I just worry and do nothing. Well, we've actually moved past that stage. That's sort of part of that reassessing that we've already talked about. But what we're seeing at the moment is a growth in the number of people who are actively thinking up solutions, again, linked to that reassessing thing, but a growing gap between the people who are able to take action against those ideas. We put on the right hand side kind of a yes, but situation. And Laura, it's irritating to hear other people say that. It's
Mm.
sort of devastating when that's all you hear in your own mind.
Yeah, I know you're sort of annoying yourself. We've all sat opposite a friend and thought, oh my goodness, how many times have they told us about this situation? When are they going to make a decision? When are they actually going to do something? Well, we're sort of in this ourselves. And I think not only is it frustrating, it's quite tiring because your mind is very, very, very busy. It's burning kind of quite a lot of energy. And then you're finding yourself almost building your own sort of like roadblocks as to why you can't do certain things. It's uncertain and it's quite kind of high energy, like pent up energy.
Yeah. And so we are going to look at how brands might be able to
Mm.
do that. Before we do it, though, I think this chart is worth kind of reflecting on. So we ask people about who they trust to help them and make the right decisions for us as a country or as well. And we've got two lines on here. One is the average of all of the organisations that we look at, and that would be very far ranging from government to banks to social media companies. The other one is a single code there within the whole battery, which is celebrities or famous people who stand up for causes. Now, it's about the only one that we see in
Mm.
the ascendancy. So this is sort of stark moment for brands that might be listening, isn't it? Because consumers desperately want to move forward. We're seeing this growing gap between the ideas they've got in the mind and their bravery to actually take a step forward. The thing that you need at those moments is someone you trust to give you the first step. And what we're saying at the moment is brands are lacking on that. If there's anybody out there, it's individuals.
Yeah, real voices, I think, and people who probably show an awful lot more kind of empathy and a rich kind of understanding of just how kind of difficult people are finding it at the moment.
Yeah. So if that is where we're at, we are finally, Laura, going to have a look at kind of what's next and look at where brands might be able to sit
Mm.
within that. So we are specifically looking at the next sort of spring, summer period. And Laura, you've got a tagline there, headline for it.
Yeah, I think we are in a coping zone at the moment. We have talked about that the recovery isn't coming. This is a sense of coping, but I think what is so important is that this coping mode gets some kind of a summer. I think that is the major opportunity for brands over the next 6 months.
Yeah, 100%. So if we just paint a picture of what happens in the year, so this is work that we have done where we've rolled together all of our last 6 years worth of data and really just understood the arc of the year in terms of consumer mood. And it turns out it does have a very clear arc. And we are basically moving into what is typically a very buoyant time of year.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got sort of quite a lot of personal momentum around this time. The kind of world opens up. This would be the sort of summer that people kind of often have in our mind. This comes from our playbook, by the way. If anyone's interested in this, we'd love to talk to you about it. I think it's interesting for a number of fronts, isn't it, Alison? How early in the summer we absolutely
Your
get that
peak, yeah.
peak, how important that is, that kind of May into June time. But yes, this is what should kind of be on the cards for people.
Yeah, so we're talking specifically
Mm.
about those periods, and basically then, so we're talking about April through to September, and it is a period of growth, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a moment whereby the kind of calendar opens up, life kind of opens up a little bit. We have moments where we kind of move away from being so rigidly planned to money and kind of get a bit sort of spendier and kind of enjoy today even more than we would normally be kind of used to. We get a bit more kind of social. We have kind of holidays. We have a real sort of chill and check out time, don't we, during that moment where it really comes down in rest and relaxation, kind of tuning out of work, a lot of kind of stay home, a lot of kind of just enjoy the garden. And then in September, we really move back to quite a strong kind of reset moment.
Yeah, so we know that that's, as you said, the invisible line.
Mm.
That's what we would expect in any year, and to some extent, that will play out this
Yeah.
year as well. So we absolutely expect all of that kind of to be going on. But that is going to play out against this backdrop of storm and slump. And this sort of quantifies the sort of storm part of it that we are currently facing into. So we said a lot of the storm is coming from the US government, and we can see on this chart the number of people who are terrified by political unrest. There have been peaks of this prior to the arrival of Trump as president, but really since his
Mm.
inauguration, it's never gone down to the sort of the base level. And you can see if we look at the very final week there, it's sort of at peak levels here and now. So we're going to enter this spring summer period feeling more wobbled about the world, which is why, of course, we see optimism back under pressure again. The flip side of that is we are moving ever increasingly towards being concerned about our finances again. So it's not back up to the levels of 2022, but it is in the ascendancy again. And I think critically, Laura, it's in the ascendancy despite the fact that we've learned how to deal with not having any money in a way that we didn't know about as we entered the cost of living crisis.
Yeah, we've gained a lot of confidence, a lot of tricks. We've kind of learned what works. We've recalibrated a little bit, and yet, yes, we still see that accelerating once again.
Yeah. So that's the stage, generally a buoyant time of year, but this year sort of tougher, I
Mm.
think, on both the slump and the storm. So what we're going to do is look at five areas where brands can really help, I think, consumers over this period. As that invisible line does play out, we think these are going to be particular areas that consumers are going to need or desire kind of health. So the first one is about close comfort living. We think in this volatile world, we're going to be drawn to kind of living quite a sensible life, a quieter summer than we would have been hoping for, and maybe that we even want to admit to ourselves at this moment in time. The second area is we're going to see holidays, destination holidays, very much under pressure, but we think they are a really important part of people's lives. They're going to really miss out on a reset moment if they don't have them. So we think there's a big opportunity for brands just to help us kind of say yes to them, find ways of making it happen, or if the big thing can't happen, at least be able to substitute it with other things. The third area is around sort of the fact that we're tired, we're looking for ways to cope within that. And so we think there's an opportunity to help people, an element of treating, but an element almost of like just being able to cope, I think, with what is here and now. Laura, talk to the restart.
Yeah, I think we really need a restart. I think there is a sense of kind of plateauing. And so I think brands need to think about designing for re-entry rather than a kind of world of stop and start. And progress is something we feel kind of reasonably starved of. And so making that visible is very important. And then we're going to reflect on younger people in the class of what now. And I think this is a group of people that are kind of misunderstood, misread, and are in real need of support. And there's real kind of opportunity for brands there. And I think meeting them where the kind of old scripts have kind of run out is very important.
Good. So let's look at that close comfort living
Yeah.
first of all. So we fundamentally do think it is going to be a quieter summer.
Mm.
It's still that invisible line, as I say, will happen. It will be busier than over the early part of the year, but just fractionally less busy than usual. So Laura, in this crazy world, people are drawn to very familiar things.
Familiar things, certain things, smaller things, things that we know we'll be able to have. So, kind of time at home, time with kind of closest friends and family, watching telly. And there's something about a world that feels very stormy, very uncertain. If you kind of bring it down to quite strong kind of emotional core, there's something about that that feels very reassuring, the kind of familiarity of it. So, quite little things and quite home-based
Yeah,
things.
so when we can feel wobbled, we put
Yeah.
down very firm foundations. And we can see it in the ascendancy here, can't we? We've told ourselves it's good to be at home. That's sort of plateaued, but it's much, much higher than it
Mm.
was. But look at something like watching telly or roaming too far. No, we're kind of staying very local within that. Laura, the risk is that this is taken too far and we do nothing over the summer. And actually, specifically, I think, sort of get absorbed in our phone and live a purely digital existence.
Yeah, and I think we've all had that sensation. Time flying can be a beautiful sensation for people. Sort of social moments, holidays that sort of go too quick, weekends that go fast. That can be a really lovely sensation. There's also the flip side of that, of where did it go? And I think we've all felt that when we've been in front of a screen. And that is a real watch out for this summer, that actually the days start to blur. There isn't kind of a big memory, a big story attached to it. We can almost feel ourselves and our worlds kind of shrinking slightly within it. And it feels like a kind of missed opportunity, a sense of kind of missed time, and it will suddenly kind of be September and 2026 will be looking kind of light on everything that we really value, like, you know, stories to tell, photos, moments of kind of connection. So it is really important that we don't scroll away summer.
Yeah. And I think it is worth saying, isn't it, that parents are particularly concerned about this in relation to their children. So they kind of recognize they're spending time on their phones in a digital world, but don't see the consequence of it, but are feeling very concerned about how much their children. So that sense of
Mm.
stagnation playing out particularly through the eyes of parents. So, Laura, we've got some ideas, haven't we, here about how brands could help consumers. Why don't you reflect on these?
Yeah, I think there's some big brand roles around actually helping them sort of step forward, that kind of moment where we're caught in this doing gap of thinking of lots of solutions but not kind of making that step. I think just cutting through some of the load on that, not 40 options, kind of one really good kind of choice. I think helping people set boundaries a little bit. We know that people are feeling a little bit worn out. They want this sense of close comfort. They want that kind of with permission, they want moments just for themselves without kind of feeling selfish, ways that people can take that little slice for themselves this summer and get a kind of bit of a sense of kind of respite, will feel important. And I also think within this, a sense of kind of absorbing some of those shocks. I think that actually what people really want is like no surprises. I was sort of thinking about this, like 3 days out without an asterisk, like a sense that something is what you expect it to be. It would feel very refreshing at this
I
point.
think shock absorber is
Mm,
really important, isn't it? Because I think the one thing that people don't like is that sense of
yeah.
being blindsided. And because they're fearful of being blindsided, of course, that is why they want to stay at home within their own sort of circle of control. So it will be a quieter than normal season. We don't want to completely sleepwalk through it at the same time. We want some memories whilst we're managing to cope.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's lots that brands can do to help here. We're going to be drawn to home. So anything that makes that feel kind of more of a destination and a nicer place to be will feel good. We're going to be drawn to local. So anything that really connects us to where we are, gives us kind of micro trips out, or kind of brings a little bit of sense of kind of community, will be important. We do want a sense of having done something. I think we want to spend the summer somehow. And so challenges, streaks, little skills, those sorts of things, I think will be important. Making sure a slow weekend doesn't end up in a sort of empty kind of nothing weekend.
Yeah. So coping and making the most of this sort of slow, smaller living. Okay, the second area we think is holidays. Now, this is a very significant thing. It's the biggest outlay other than Christmas for many, many people over the year. So the decision about whether to have one or not is a very big part of whether your finances end up kind of adding up at the end of the year. And basically, we think a lot of people are going to put them off, but holidays play a very important part of people's lives. You've got lots going on there,
Yeah.
Laura. I now can't.
Um,
There we go. So the number of people who've booked holidays, it's been under pressure really since the middle of last year. Holidays over the last summer holiday were down, and we've seen them continue to be down quite significantly. And I think a lot of people are sort of dithering over it. What can they do? How can they sort of square the circle? What kind of magic tricks can they pull to mean that they manage to get a holiday? But the upshot at this moment in time is deferring, deciding not to have one,
mm,
or maybe just stretching sort of from every 12 months to every 16 months. And
mm,
that's enough to have this impact on these
mm,
figures. The really important thing, though, is a holiday is just a massive reset moment for people. We look on this chart on the left-hand side here, when we look at the top 10 things a holiday offers. These things that holidays offers are all incredibly important given the pain points that we're currently experiencing. And so if we don't get to have a holiday, we don't get to have that proper relaxation. We don't get to have the
mm.
laughter that feels very light at this moment in time. We don't get to experience new and different things that we are very short of.
Yeah, we don't get that full sense of rest. Rest comes in so many different forms, doesn't it? It gives us kind of impetus to kind of change things on our return. It gives us that kind of sense of deadline before we go. There's so much I think a holiday kind of creates for us that is so kind of recharging and re-energizing. And without it, we get these kind of pockets of relief, time where we're not doing as much. So it might feel kind of restful, but actually the sensation we're left with is like an itch, like a restlessness.
Yeah.
So a difficult sense for people. And so finding ways to make a holiday happen is important, but also finding ways for people who can't make a holiday happen but still get a slice of that reset is important.
Yeah, and I think that this comes onto the sort of brand roles that we'll look
Mm,
at in a moment. I think one thing that is going to really happen over this 6 week period of the school holidays is parents are going to find the juggle incredibly hard this year. So it's always a time of year, isn't it, where parents are under pressure. But as we move into this year, I think it's going to ramp up another notch. So holiday clubs are very, very expensive for people. Um, I think the workplaces have got tougher in terms of people going to work. And so the 6 weeks holiday, I think, is going to be an absolute pressure point, particularly if we don't get a respite of a proper holiday during this period.
yeah, because I think if you get a week or 2 weeks kind of away, that is kind of 2 weeks totally taken care of. That's out of the kind of Jenga period. It can be kind of well placed. So you come back with a bit of kind of energy to kind of face into the rest of it. I think that this will feel very difficult for people. I think they need help kind of cutting through it, making kind of a real plan, blocking kind of solving almost kind of whole weeks, not kind of day to day, just kind of getting through and balancing, which I think is how it feels so difficult for so many parents.
Yeah. Okay, so how can brands help the brand roles here? So I think we're going to come on to look at how holidays might be made possible. But for the people who don't get full holidays, there's an opportunity for brands to open our eyes to new perspectives that we're not going to be able to get on a main summer holiday, help us to be able to explore and see things locally. And I think for those people who literally stay at home, it's a possibility to open our eyes to do new things around our home and make that feel a different place as
Mm.
well. So that's one side that brands can help. The other side is just make yes a possibility.
Yeah, I think a lot of people want a break from adding up, from kind of worrying about how much things are going to cost, that sort of like final bill kind of anxiety. So anything that's kind of all in, I think can really help people move forward. I think total reframes on sort of small things that maybe people would have need to reevaluate. Actually there can be really aesthetically beautiful hostels. There can be ways kind of families can share rooms and it not feel really quite difficult. Ways to get kind of proper escape in maybe a very different way than people are used to. People don't want to fly as far. So what sorts of different kind of options can we open our eyes to that would feel kind of really restorative? Anything around kind of timing hacks, anything that speaks to removing a bit of risk, anything that gives us a bit of an itinerary, I think, and helps kind of show what is possible, because I think they're sort of juggling too many compromises.
Yeah. Okay, so holidays, under threat, but anything brands can do to help us say yes to a holiday, or if we're not able to say yes to a holiday, to substitute it, the needs that it meets in other ways. Okay, so next territory, Laura, tired people, small lifts. So this is kind of a sense that we are very worn out. Got a chart here, goes all the way back to 2021. And honestly, we put this on as a statement because people did feel worn out
Mm,
by the pandemic at this point in time. Well, since then, it's kind of roared into different kind of phases, and with cost of living crisis, and now as we kind of really come to the peak of that storm and slump period. So we feel worn out. Um, the way that we have coped with it many times over the last 6 years is to turn to treating. And of course, we can remember all of that kind of in COVID days, can't we, with takeaways and all that sort of thing. The really interesting thing of late is we've continued to treat, but there is a guilt attached to that treating. So we've kind of moved, as we've said here, from the lipstick kind of treat to a paracetamol kind of
mhm.
treat. Tell us about that distinction.
I think it's an important distinction. I think the lipstick sensation is like I want to treat, I'm spending to feel good. I can't afford the bag, so I'll have the kind of lipstick, that kind of sense of it's only laden with feel good. It's got quite a lot of afterglow. It's still got that treat sensation. The paracetamol effect is like a numbing effect, like spend to feel less bad. And I think one of the things that makes this so difficult, and it's probably why we've seen some of that change in our savings and our kind of sense of debt and the guilt element is that this just sort of solves today. This doesn't have that kind of afterglow, and this doesn't have that kind of same um I guess just kind of real boost. It does just sort of take away some of that we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, I mean, I think critically there is not a good aftertaste to it, is
No.
there? It sort of is a downer you
Mm,
regret rather than kind of move on with
mm,
some sort of glow. So it is really important, I think, to help people treat. They need a lift in this sort of
mm.
mindset that they're in at the moment. And so how can brands do this? What are the sort of roles that they can play that is going to allow people to treat themselves without kind of milking the situation and leaving them with a bad taste afterwards?
I think anything that upgrades at a kind of reachable price point, so feeling better without kind of overpaying for that, is very important. Helping people understand where to get the best out of their money, how to kind of save, not to busy themselves with every single part of the puzzle, but really kind of get bang for their buck in a few big areas. And I also think this sense of like, what have you already got that you could completely maximize? We've seen people do this in their homes, really think about how to tidy it up and just make it kind of look different without spending anything. I think there's so many opportunities around this for summer. What have you already got that you could kind of dust off, that you could kind of use again, see with different eyes, borrow, share, all of those sorts of things?
Yeah, and so essentially what we're saying is how can you give some people relief without any regret afterwards or minimizing the
Mhm.
regret attached to it?
And I think a lot of this comes down to helping people be quite choiceful, being quite kind of deliberate. So it feels like a sort of chosen good moment rather than a kind of I caved, that's not great kind of feeling. I think as long a feeling associated with it as possible is really important here. When they do have it, helping create a space where that is kind of shame free, where it feels like they can really just enjoy it, that it's in some way kind of earned. I think building a bit of anticipation around it is really important. And also just ways to make sure that it doesn't kind of roll into a place where we feel like we shouldn't have let it get to. So sort of some gentle sort of stop nudges, a sense of slight guardrails here.
Yeah. Okay, so relief without regret. So let's move on to the fourth area here. And this is about restart, isn't it?
Mhm.
And I think the big story within this is we made a lot of progress last year, and that was slow incremental improvements. That's stalling a little bit, and we really want to get started, restarted. So if there was one big message at the beginning of 2025 was a sense that people acknowledged that times were tough. We perhaps didn't realize how tough and how long they were going to continue for, but we recognized it was going to be hard. And the way we decided we were going to cope with that was a slow and steady progress through the
Mm.
year. So, a sense of if we take one step forward and keep adding to it, that is compound interest, and we'll end up in a much better place as a result of that. Now, the good news on these charts here is that did happen during 2025. But as we've moved into 2026, we've just stalled, haven't
Mm.
we? Christmas was sort of a bit of a line in the sand. We normally have a reset moment in January, and for one reason or another, we've not managed to get that new sense of impetus.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are once again at peak worn out. These things are really, really difficult to kind of keep moving with and keep going with. And so, yeah, we see them plateau. I think your data on the next slide is really interesting.
Yeah, so plattering on all of these things that need sort of repetition
Mm,
there, sort of exercise, gym, maintaining a balanced diet, just all kind of coming off.
mm,
I think this chart here does play to the sense that it is going to be a quieter summer. There's fewer things in
mm,
our calendar. And so when we ask people about, are you looking forward to the coming weeks? We are way down on
mm.
where we've been at this moment in time, and it's really come off. And I think without a deadline, you've not got something to work towards, have you? And a deadline could be something like a wedding in your diary
Mm.
or a family event. You want to turn up looking good. And so you start to eat better, do your skincare and go to the gym or whatever. And that, as just without that deadline, we've got less urgency.
Yeah, they're really powerful, I think, these things. They create, as you say, a sort of sense of working towards something. They also create a sense of, well, of, I think, of almost something earned. We were talking about that in the last section, almost I'm going to work in this chunk, this sort of project, these next 12 weeks. We haven't got those things punctuating our life in quite the same way in order to get ourselves to kind of gather up energy and have something to aim.
Yeah, and we cautioned this at the beginning of
Mm,
last year, didn't we? That the long game is a hard game.
mm.
And it turns out that we did do that very well all of last year. But here and now, we're finding the long game much harder to play.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our progress feels very hard to see. And as soon as progress feels hard to see, it's very difficult to think, well, I'll keep working on kind of what to kind of input. That feels very, very hard, I think. I think small slips can then sort of spiral quite quickly and we get to a sense of kind of what's the point? Things feel a little bit too monotonous, I think. And then that feels difficult to focus on as well. So it's a very difficult game.
Yeah, and I think if you've not been to the gym for 3 weeks, it feels harder to go, doesn't it? You know, you're going to find it
Mm.
more difficult again. And so, yeah, so we're losing kind of the tortoise approach that we had deployed so well during last year. Laura, we can see on this chart here that we're also struggling to kind of maintain that same approach to our workplace as well. So we do know that pay increases have just come off a little bit, but we've lost a bit of mojo in terms of even like going on LinkedIn. We're feeling a bit nervous about actually applying for new jobs because we feel it's going to be safer to stay in the place that we're in.
Mm.
And so we can see the same energy levels just dip a little bit in relation to careers and jobs.
Yeah, sense of kind of keep your head down.
Yeah.
Don't kind of push maybe too much. I think that you're exactly right.
Yeah. So I think we absolutely believe that people want to continue or would like to get back on the tortoise approach. But of course, every time that falters, this is what we do. We look for a shortcut.
Mm.
And so we can see on something like weight loss at the moment, where we're seeing absolutely massive growth year on year, is not on the slow tortoise things, but it is on something like GLP-1s, where we can get a shortcut, a fast, and I think absolutely confident way,
Yeah.
sure, fast way of getting to a destination.
Yeah, I think this is about guarantees. This isn't going to be burning energy and getting nowhere. We are sure that after a certain amount of time, there will be real progress. We'll be able to see it, we'll be able to feel it, other people will too. And there's something about that that just feels very, very, very appealing right now.
Yeah. So we want to get back on these
Mm.
rhythms, this slow and steady progress. So big opportunity brand role just to help that happen. Part of it is literally to sort of show us the routines, help us see a way, routes, methods of doing that. I think the other thing is just visualizing the
Mm.
progress because slow and steady can be so incremental that we can't notice it ourselves. So bringing it into plain sight allows us to recognize the progress that we're making. And also, I think just celebrating where we have got to. So it's not necessarily about just rigid streaks, is it? It's about celebrating each time you do
Mm.
it. It doesn't matter if you fail once. The important thing is that
Mm.
you kind of get back on the path.
Mm.
So you've said wins from zero.
Yeah, I think we can feel like we keep hitting zero again, but actually it's much more about re-entry than it is about being at zero. So I think celebrating how far people have already come. I think making day one feel less scary. You've been here before. This is continuation. This isn't a giant announcement to the world. It's not a confession. You can just kind of jump straight back in again. But plans and routines that are built to be kind of paused. You haven't failed. You haven't stopped and started again. This was kind of always part of the plan, I think. Anything that feels like a small way in. And I think really heroing, like you don't have to be at 100%. It could be the 80% version. That could that could still really kind of deliver things, ways we can establish things and they'll kind of work along in the background and then suddenly we'll see some sense of progress, I think. Anything that is just going to keep us going and not make us feel like we have failed. is very
Yeah.
important.
So fundamentally trying to get back on the tortoise path, but I guess helping people every now and again when they're not on it to get back on
Yeah.
it, so they can fast track back onto that path. Okay, the final area we're going to look at is the young people this year, the under 25s. And of course, in that age group, a lot happened. You leave school, you go to university, you graduate, and all of that, I think, is playing out in very, very different times. And so we're going to take a look at what is happening. Now, the big macro environment, I think, is difficult for this age group because it is an age group where you appear on the job market. And being on the job market is the unlock to then kind of moving on in other life stages. We can see here in terms of the number of people who are terrified about the job market, it is at a 6-year high. And you can really see that that's ebbing and flowing, particularly over recent times in relation to being concerned about the impact of AI.
Mm. Yeah, I think this is a sense that kind of all bets are off. Really, kind of idolized and alluring kind of careers are suddenly kind of up in the air. Well, we need lawyers anymore, like that kind of sensation, I think. And there's so much in the world of kind of TikTok and things like that about careers that are going to become kind of basically kind of extinct. They feel that people are going to be replaced. What should you be studying? And I think what's so difficult about this kind of moment in time for younger people is that they are being led on a completely new path, but they're still being told kind of old scripts, I think. I've seen this thing on TikTok, people must have seen it, where your parents think that if you go into a place physically with your CV,
How
everyone's
is
going to
going
be
to,
like, give that person a job, kind of straight away. Some of those kind of older mindsets, I think, just
that
feel
might work though.
redundant.
I'm a boomer. Didn't we talk about this though yesterday, Laura? That do this to do the things that don't scale.
Yes, do the things that don't
Because I
scale.
think something
Yes, yes,
with
yes.
CV literally is that, isn't it?
I'll show you some new CV ourselves.
Maybe it doesn't work. Okay, so I think that the backdrop is difficult for this age group. We split this out here in terms of being concerned about AI. You can see it growing across all age groups, but particularly strongly in that youngest age group. But the thing the youngest age group are focused on is being terrified about the job market. It's head and shoulders above concerns across any other age group, and it's grown fastest in that age group as well. What is really intriguing is now when we look at something like the number of times leaving the house, this age group are actually not leaving the house very much.
Mm.
And that really talks to a very digital existence amongst this age group.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting, isn't it? Because people talk about this, that them being kind of digital natives and all of those sorts of things. And then you see data like this and you think they leave the house less than people over the age of 65. Like that is absolutely incredible, I think. And I think there probably is a big job for many brands to do just to kind of catch up with what their world is really like and meet them kind of where they are, which is a much more sort of home-based digital
Home-based
space.
lives, yeah, absolutely. And we looked at it in relation to clothing
Yeah.
recently, didn't we? And the truth is, this age group have got much less need for sort of dressing up,
Mm,
going out clothes than their predecessors. So wearing very casual, kind of
mm,
home-based clothing. So life is different, and it's difficult for them to kind of navigate their way through because, as you say, previous generations, including me, take your CV around, don't understand it. And so they feel lonely, like they're falling behind, but it's often quite hard to put the finger on why they're falling behind. But they are more certain that they're going to have to take a bit of a leap of faith, do something different, do something that's unproven in life to make sense of their now very strange
mm.
situation.
Yeah, yeah. A sense of kind of completely mixing it up, I think that this can't be it. These old ways won't work. I need to sort of do something quite bold, quite different, kind of take a risk and take a path that almost kind of no one else, maybe in my family that I know has done before.
Yeah. So some really important roles for brands, I think,
Mm,
in literally opening people's eyes up to different possibilities. I think it is a demographic that are low on confidence, and I think their appearance actually is
mm,
important within that. And we can see that very high levels of things like dental and, and cosmetic or interventions. So wanting to build their confidence, but I think physical confidence is a big part of that. But at the same time as that, just keeping it real and keeping it
Mm.
honest, because they are low on facts and figures often and will go on kind of gut instinct. And so helping people to make very good decisions. So, Laura, that brings us to a close for today.
Mm.
We've got a few questions that we were going to play with.
I just thought these were some things that maybe I was with a client the other week and used to sort of chew on this thing and they quite liked it. So I thought just some things to kind of leave you with at the end of this before your next session. Are you designing for a really confident consumer? Because right now, most of them are in a much more kind of cautious space. So have that at the kind of fore of your mind.
Yet you probably are very confident yourself. And
Yeah.
certainly you're trying to influence probably senior stakeholders that feel confident and may have a massive empathy gap between that and what is the average sentiment of the nation at this moment in time.
Yes. People are feeling unsure. They're feeling uncertain and they're whirling in this solution to action gaps. How big is day one or how small is your first step? Because really, it needs to feel like an inch forward.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, isn't it? We so overestimate, I think, the size of challenge that people are prepared to take on. And so, yeah, one tiny step is what you're asking people
Mm.
to do.
We know there's an empathy gap between people in businesses, people that you're sort of influencing, your kind of stakeholders, and the UK, the people that we've been talking about today. Are you planning for the summer that you want, or that you imagine, or the one that's really coming? I think is a big message from today.
Yeah.
Um, I think the small life needs to feel a little bit bigger than it does. But you need to make it feel just a little bit bigger, not just more expensive, not just a kind of small existence for more. That feels very difficult for people at the moment. I think people are thinking quite differently about how they spend their money. We are being careful, but I think the feeling we want to feel is clever, and we know, sorry, that there's been moments where we've really felt like we found a win. And so I think, does spending with you feel like a win, or actually is there just kind of quite big compromise at the heart of some of that?
Because in compromise comes guilt, and they're not going to want to return for that.
Yeah. Um, are you kind of really building people up? Because I think that's what they need. Not just, there's a lot about keeping people busy and there's a lot about kind of filling summer, but this is about making them feel like they've spent a summer well, that they've got sort of stories to tell, that they feel a bit better about themselves, a bit empowered. So it's about building them, not just busying them.
Yeah, and your final one is about young
Mm.
people. The script has changed. Life is very, very different for under 25s now. And I think there's such a media image of that age group, isn't there? I mean, we've looked at kind of the number of Google searches about that age group, and I think there's so many myths. And so it's so important, I think, to recognize life as they are experiencing it and making sure you're meeting them in their life rather than the old life.
Mhm. Yes.
Very good. So,
Yes.
Laura, we are done for
Yes, we are.
today. How would somebody get hold of these slides?
We are going to be sending these around to everybody who's here or is on our sort of catch-up list today. You will be able to get access to our platform. So for any clients, you'll find this straight on the platform. And for anybody else, you'll be able to get a trial of the platform in order to access it.
All right. Okay. And on the platform, people would be able to see all of our previous sort of original content, of
Mhm.
which we issue reports every single week, but also have a play with our data.
Yes.
And our data has access to 26,000 questions and the ability to be able to interrogate them and get some AI analysis on them as well.
Mm. Yes.
Very good. Very good. All right. Well, thank you for joining. I know we've had a lot of people
Mm.
come along today, so thank you very much for coming along and
Mhm.
hope to see some of you again very soon.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.